All right. So let's start with your
Okay.
like elementary school years, your childhood years.
Childhood years.
Tell me, what did you love to do as a child?
What did I love to do as a child? I was thinking about this the other day, actually. I was kind of cleaning my house and kind of down on all fours because I'm also trying to incorporate some stretching. And as I was doing that, I kind of had a flash of memory of, being a kid and kind of crawling around. And there was this one time, that clear memory, crawling around by myself as a kid. I like to do that, I kind of like to be alone as a kid, which is odd, because you think I'm a bit of an extrovert. But anywho, my mom had this big glass ashtray that had a curve to it. And I can remember like crawling around, I put the ashtray up here when it's clean, obviously. And it had that funny curve, so it would make my view kind of like green and weird and bent.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
interesting, yeah.
So I would just spend a lot of time doing that. And this is foreshadowing, by the way. So that was favorite kind of thing as a child. And I'm thinking young child, other obviously when I got older. So this is probably like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So enjoyed that because that's in my mind now. And also spinning around and spinning around and spinning around.
Yeah.
And then falling down, right?
You enjoyed that feeling?
I did, and that's why I think it's interesting, because, like I told you before, I'm in recovery, and that's part of my story. But I think that just early on, I was trying to change reality.
Interesting.
Yeah, like even then, I was like, gotta have something different. I gotta bend this somehow.
Yeah.
I wonder that. I keep thinking, like when I retire, like if I did like a study, like find out, people who had or have drug and alcohol problems, if as a child they exhibited behaviors that was like that, trying to change reality.
Yeah.
Like some kind of thing they've got to do to fix it. Because I had some friends who, because I've done a little bit of anecdotal research on this, and some of my friends who are also in recovery, they would say, oh yeah, I used to try and hyperventilate. Like I'd make myself hyperventilate and get like a buzz. Yeah.
Interesting.
Anyway, and that's kind of an odd side note there, but other things.
Like during elementary school age?
Yeah. Like I said, wouldn't that be an interesting kind of like study to see like, wow, even as a young person, there's something about their either anxiety or way their brain was mapped that they kind of were trying to rewire something.
Yeah.
That you're kind of born with a predisposition for that,
Do you think you had anxiety or something like that as a child? Or?
Most definitely, yeah. I to think about that, about the anxiety and those sort of things. This isn't like an earliest memory, but it's definitely. Oh, look how cute those little box of the kids in it. So here, if we go this way, it's kind of pretty, and also that little picnic table we could visit if you like.
Yeah.
Anxiety. I can remember like having an idyllic childhood, right? Like I was happy, things were cool. And I used to like to go into our backyard, and at the time, 4 or 5, it seemed so big because, when you're a kid, like everything's like, oh. So you want to walk down and around or?
Sure.
Yeah, let's go down and check out the beach, such as it is. And then we'll go over there. So having that, feeling idyllic and walking around in the backyard, and there was kind of paths, and as I would sort of walk around, I was like, oh, forest, and it was a really fun feeling. And I remember doing that a lot, and it was fun in that same way that you guys were talking about seeing a movie you weren't sure that you'd already seen, but it had that, this is familiar, so it's safe, because I kind of know what's going to happen next, but I still have a little bit of, I'm exploring kind of feeling. I like that. That's my jam.
Okay.
That's a sweet spot for me.
Yeah.
Kind of familiar, kind of safe, but a little bit, maybe not.
Yeah.
This is also a place where I go swimming. I've been practicing here as of late to kind of get in my miles, open water. But
where do you swim?
Either just when I'm trying to do some, speed work with the swim, because I do that. I just go back and forth here, or like I'll start here, and I have a little buoy. I wear my wetsuit and I have a buoy, and I start here, and then I go over to like that third dock, and then back maybe a couple times, and that'll be like a mile. But for Ironman, it's a 2.5 mile swim. So I've got to get there within the next few months. But I probably could do it now, but it would suck, so I would make it not suck. And then also to get used to the water. So So I got to keep swimming every day because it'll get colder and colder. Because
Right.
if I tried to just go, you know, I'm not going to do that, and then try and get into
Mm-hmm.
56 to 60 degree water,
Yeah.
I won't be able to do it.
Right.
So I have to acclimate.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I'm doing. There's a picnic table. We could be really loud and rude, and they would probably leave. Or we could grab that one over there.
We could walk some more.
Let's promenade, man.
Okay.
I'll get on the other side of you. Should
We'll
I do that?
switch.
You
Yep.
want me to list again?
Yep.
Yeah, so I was walking along in the backyard and just really enjoying it. And then all of a sudden I had this kind of like really bad feeling. You know, like all of a sudden it was kind of like this dark kind of came over me. And I was just like, something's not right with the world. And I remember actually feeling that way. Like, this is, I guess it was probably my first panic attack, anxiety attack.
Yeah.
And I was just like really, really uncomfortable, really scared. And I remember kind of like backing out. And then pretty much for the rest of the day being kind of wrecked. You know? Yeah. And I think in my mind, you know, I probably had high strung as a kid anyway, which I was told was the case like from the get-go. But so probably, you know, having that anxiety and then having that feeling and not really knowing, you know, what that's about, you know,
Yeah.
and then not being able to really explain that. And I don't know about you, but I think most people who have, you know, anxiety or, I don't know, emotional issues, emotional health issues, it's a bummer because, you know, you try and either intellectualize it yourself or the people who are, you know, friends and loved ones, they try and talk you down, like, well, there's nothing wrong with that, it's perfectly normal.
Yeah.
You know?
Which is the opposite of helpful.
Yeah, you know, because then you're like, oh, okay, now I'm just crazy, you know,
Yeah,
or you minimize
'cause-
your feelings.
Yes. But I actually felt that way, but they're saying I didn't, so
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel even worse now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, so those were that kind of thing. But when I wasn't having those uncomfortable things, love to be outside and hiking and running and playing. And, you know, well, we're the same age, so it's similar. I don't know if it's the same for you, but in our little area, you know, it was a subdivision, but at the end of the subdivision, where's that cul-de-sac, there was actually like cornfields and sort of a foresty area. And, you know, if you went a little further into it, there was like a creek and, you know, it was trees and forest. So I just remember having access to all of that, you know, and again, like Andy and I talk about it too, like in the 70s, you know, people, families, like parents were like, get out of the house and come back when it's dark.
Yeah. Yeah.
They didn't want you around. And yeah, so I just remember a lot of times just, you know, summer especially, just going out with my friends, going in the woods, playing all kind of games, capture the flag, running around, and then getting dirty and falling all over the place. And then just saying, oh, we better get back, you know. So that was joyous. I really enjoyed that. I guess outdoors?
Yeah.
Outdoorsy stuff?
Yeah, yeah. So you had long stretches of the days where you were out just exploring as a kid.
Yeah, definitely in the summer.
Yeah.
So this is more parking lot-y.
Yeah, so outdoor adventure.
Yes, yeah, definitely like the outdoor adventure. And we had kind of a nice mix of kids in our neighborhood, you know, my age and then kind of all the way a little bit older. And at least I remember that we all kind of hung out together. You know, I mean, there were certainly times, I guess, when the older kids were kind of like, didn't want us around necessarily. But for the most part, I can remember kind of group stuff where I remember one, like, it was kind of like the best day ever. The older kids would play Capture the Flag. Remember that game?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they were going to play Capture the Flag, and we were all, we want to do it, we want to play. So they, I guess, were like, okay. And they're going to let the little kids play with them. And, you know, broke us into teams. And I was just like, felt like, you know, I had crossed a passage, you know. It's like, I'm playing with the big kids now, you know. So that was like really fun. And the whole day seemed like forever. You know, like days when you're a kid, like, it was forever. And just like so much fun and perfect blue sky and great weather and, you know, feeling confident and, you know, like I was crossing over into like, I'm not a baby anymore. I'm a big kid, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it was exciting.
About what age was that, do you think?
Probably like 7.
7? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
7, 8-ish, you know. Because, you know, like you kind of were a little taller and probably didn't like cry as much, you know. So. So, and like you were fast enough too. And I was a pretty athletic kid even then. So they probably were like, okay, she'll be a good member of the team, you know, because I was pretty spry, you know.
Yeah, that 7 or 8 age is kind of, I still feel like there's part of me that is that age, if that makes sense.
It does, me too.
Yeah, so
Yeah, it's seminal time.
Identify with that feeling for sure.
Yeah, that must be like a certain, you know, what would you call those? Threshold ages. You know, for me, I think like, you know, 4 or 5 because you're going to school, right? And then 7, 8, maybe because you got a little bit more control of your arms and legs, you know, like you kind of figured them out. And then I guess like the tweens, right? Like 13, 14, at least for girls, you know, I'm not sure if guys kind of just slide right through that. But what about with you with that? Like, do you have like a age was like, I always thought about that for like middle school, like for guys. I think like the guys that I knew were just kind of like, it was just transition and they were kind of oblivious to the, you know, changing of being a kid to a tween or on your way to being a teenager.
No, I think that for me personally, there's definitely lots of changes going on. And I think just the culture for guys is to just kind of keep that close to the vest.
Yeah, like so the emotions and hormones are all over, but then you're also told, don't tell anybody about this and keep it down.
Yeah. What the things that you were afraid of, what did you fear as a child? Anything?
A lot, I think. Well, as I mentioned earlier, just kind of having a bit of that kind of innate high-strung, which goes both ways, right? It's like energetic, and that's really good. But then these like anxiety, somewhat panic attacks. But also, this might be kind of tough, but we'll figure out if I want to like let that be on paper or not.
Okay.
But my dad was like kind of like, you know, we have a great relationship now, lovely man. And as a kid, again, this might be true of a lot of dads that age, you know, he's just kind of like, you know, kind of ranty, you know what I mean? Not of like, you know, like Fred Flintstone just kind of yells a lot, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And I don't know, because I talk to friends and they're like, yeah, my dad too. So it might have been just like a thing, you know, that men of that age just kind of had this, whatever, pressure or whatever, or just, maybe it's even like, I don't know, I'm going to go ahead and say this, nothing personal, but kind of like an entitled kind of thing, you know, like I can come home and just scream at everybody. Like I make the living here, you know, and I don't think he's like thought that through or anything like that,
Sure.
but seeing as it did seem to be a pattern and, you know, so much so that it's a cliche TV type personality, you know, Ralph Cramden and, you know, I can't name them all off, but, you know, the dad comes home and just basically like unloads on everybody, you know, hard working, blah, blah. Anyway, yeah, so my dad was kind of that way. So, you know, again, my friend Amy and I, the friend I told you about that also runs into people, like we were talking about these kind of things and she's like, yeah, my dad too, like he would just come home and like scream at all of us and just, you know, talk about how, you know, his work was so stressful and, you know, that we were unappreciative of, you know, all that. You're like, you're just like a little kid, you know, you're like, well, I'm only 5, you know, I'd go work in the dairy farm if they would let me, you know, I was talking to Amy, you got to meet her. And we were talking about our family and our dads, you know, and what it was like to be growing up in that time period of like, you know, like this 60s, 70s, whatever. And, you know, I said, yeah, you know, like my dad was like such a hard ass and just complain about work and, you know, how it was so stressful. And I said, you know, I really had the feeling that like I was a burden to this family, you know, like I was costing them money, you know, because I was kind of reminded of that a lot, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would tell Andy sometimes, I was like, well, you know, with, you know, kids, they should know these things. And I said, you know, I knew what the family budget was when I was like 5 or 6.
Oh, wow.
Like I knew how much I cost, you know, like I knew how much I ate, you know, and what the, you know, I'm being exaggerated, but I knew what the room would cost if they rented it out to somebody other than me. You know, I'm being funny, but there was definitely a message that my dad and or Amy's father as well seemed to have the ability or right to just express the fact that as a child, it wasn't just the way children are seen today. Like children today are like, this is a precious thing, you know. There's we do for you, whereas I felt, you know, in my little area and certainly earlier days, you know, your kids were there as resources, you know, like farm kids, like you had them to work.
Right.
That was the whole point of children, right? This is like, this is how I, you know, get a staff, right?
Yeah, there was definitely a time frame when that was the case.
Yeah. But, so Amy and I were, you know, blah, 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 talking about this thing. And I was like, yeah, you know, like, I just always felt like really bad about that and kind of stressed out. And, well, my poor dad has to like go to work every day and it sounds really terrible. And, you know, he does this so we can have food, you know, and a roof over our heads and all that sort of thing. And I said, I kept saying, yeah, you know, like I kept thinking to myself, like, man, I got to go down to the docks and get a job or something like that. You know, and Amy goes, yeah, like little hands, you know, little hands, they might need that.
Wow, that's a lot to take in as a kid.
Yeah, so that was definitely stressful. And I can't remember what was the question.
Just, you know, your fears as a
Okay.
child.
So I guess it would be fears, just stress, anxiety, fears of, you know, this isn't like a safe necessarily or a secure thing. You know, like this home could be gone. You know, we're a middle class, normal family. It's not like we're actually on the edge there. But I had the feeling like at some point in time, you know, we could all be on the streets, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, so, you know, when you're like that, you kind of grow up with sort of a certain amount of, I don't know, would that be PTSD, you know, ish? But having not actually been a person who's on the edge of homelessness, a family that's homeless, right? Because we weren't.
Right.
But I certainly was in that mental state where those pictures were painted for me.
Yeah.
So, weird. Anyway, so that was definitely fearful. I don't think I had any of the classic stuff, you know, or like, oh, afraid a clown under my bed is going to like pull me under or anything weird like that. But let's see, other fear. No, I was actually pretty fearless, I think, otherwise, you know.
Okay.
A pretty rough and tumble kid, you know. I mean, I ended up, I think a lot of times, you know, wrestling with people and feeling pretty confident that I would win, you know. I guess kind of an aggressive kid, maybe. Especially for a girl, you know.
Yeah.
Ooh, look at this. Isn't that pretty?
It's beautiful. What a great place you guys live in.
Oh, I know. We're so lucky. I really like it. I was surprised because I'd been living, you know, in New Orleans, so it's kind of like cool, edgy, in Faubourg Marigny, and then came up to Seattle and spent, you know, most of my time in Seattle in downtown. Oh, or like Fremont, but I moved to a couple different neighborhoods, Capitol Hill. But I liked that I'm in the city. You know, I like being in the city, have like a studio apartment. Like the one time I lived above the pho place, you know, Pioneer Square, the brick buildings, and I really liked that. And then after, you know, my sister and I and my friends, we did that Dragon Chain thing. Ugh, God, what a mess. But whole other episode there. Yeah, God, that should be just a whole documentary.
Yeah,
from
I'm
my
sure.
perspective. Oh, what a dumpster fire. Shall we parade this way? There's a dog park over here. It's kind of cute. So anyway, then we moved, my sister and I, because my sister was the CFO at that time for Dragon Chain, we both moved to Bellevue to be near the offices. And it was such a great time because my sister, who lives in New Orleans, came up to be the CFO of this startup, and you know that was going to be awesome and edgy, and so she basically traveled back and forth. Anyway, so we lived in Bellevue, blah blah blah. Then I met Andy and fell in love. And anyway, so obviously we got married, and he has been on Mercer Island for a long time, and so we moved in here and we got the great house and everything. But yeah, I didn't think I would really like it at first because I kept thinking it was almost like too idyllic. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an island and it's not, you know, like you said, particularly diverse. Although it's trying, but it's got that, I feel it less so now because I'm probably used to it. But do you ever see that show, The Prisoner, Patrick McGoohan? It was a BBC show where he's a a spy, and it's like from the 60s.
Hmm.
He's a spy, and basically the trailer, or the beginning part of the series is he is coming into his office, and he's kind of like, you know, MI5 dude, and he's yelling at his, obviously, boss, but it's all quiet, but the titles are coming on. And you get the picture. The story is that he seems upset about some kind of MI5 issue, and is yelling, and he's quitting, and then he gets to his apartment, and all the smoke comes under his door, and he's like, oh, and then he kind of passes out. And so the story always starts that way. And then when the, you know, episode begins, he's always waking up in this super idyllic place that he's got his own little kind of cottage area, and it's just uberly mod perfect, like a 60s mod thing. And he's got like a kind of like a blazer and a certain colored shirt, and everybody else there looks the same. Like everybody else has like a blazer and different shirt, and they all have their own little cottage, and it's like path, just like this, and like uber idyllic. And it's this island, and he keeps trying to figure out like how he got there, what's actually going on, but all he can figure out is that when he starts to ask questions, like his neighbors and other people are like, oh, hello, you know, and they kind of like leave, and he's like, how did I get here? You know, who are you? And they all have numbers for names. And so,
Oh, weird.
So he's like, I don't know, number 5, and so people will be like, oh, hello, number 5, how are you doing today? And he's like, how did I get here? And they're like, oh, well, every way got here the same way. See you later. You know, like, and he's just like every episode, like trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Anyway, that's what my child is like. So I wake up every day going, how did I get here? What's going on?
What's your number?
Yeah, what's your number? Number 5. Yeah, because like, you know, he's always trying to figure out who's running the show there. And so he'll always, you know, talk to number 2, you know, like who is number 1? Like, so it's kind of got the Matrix thing going on, like who made up this place?
Yeah.
It's too perfect. I can't get right with this, you know. Because everyone's like, hey, Dan, just you got your own house, you got this cool blazer. I mean, you know. So part of it is a question is like, why can't you be okay with this? You know, it's got to be, all your needs are met. But it's not enough for him because he needs to know why and how and some sort of existential thing. So I don't know if you want to go around this way or just go that way.
Let's go around.
It's kind of interesting. I mean, I always wondered like what this structure was, but my guess is we'll let you guys go because we're chit-chatting. I think it must be part of the dairy farm here. Like when I look at this, I think it seems like maybe cow dairy place perhaps. You know, the foundation seems industrial, and like I said, the dairy farm was over there, so yeah, kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, anyway, when I watched that show with my mom when I was young, because my mom was a really cool lady. But again, that might have like really shaped some of my brain too. Is watching, you know, The Prisoner as a child, because it definitely was a mind-bending kind of show that brought up a lot of questions about, you know, reality and kind of existential crisis of modern life. So
wow, and you were watching this as a kid?
Yeah, you know, I question a lot of my mom's choices and stuff like that. Like, why was I watching this kind of stuff? Like, why did she let me do that? But maybe she thought I seemed really interested and genuinely maybe was smart enough to grasp it, and it was cool, you know. So I don't know.
Or maybe she had a lot going on in her life.
Yeah, maybe she's just like, whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, like she's got too much thinking of it. I like this show. Probably a combination.
Wow, what a view.
Yeah, it is beautiful here. Really pretty.
Tell me about a time as a child when you just felt really loved.
Oh, this is so interesting that you say that, because before you got here, I'm not sure why, Andy said, like, if you could go back to your 18-year-old self and say 3 words, you know, what would that be? You know, and I said, you are loved.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it just came out really quickly, and I thought, oh wow, yeah, like I would have liked to have heard that.
Yeah.
You know, that I would have liked to have known that, because clearly I didn't. You know, clearly I did not know that, because as an adult, the first answer out of my mouth for words to be spoken to me were that, you know.
Yeah.
And Andy said, Google, Facebook, Amazon. Those are the 3 words that he would tell his 18-year-old self.
To invest.
Yeah. And, yeah, so I thought that was funny too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really pretty.
No, that makes sense because, like, for me, I was definitely loved as a kid. But when I was, you know, doing some therapy a few years ago, you know, one of the traumas that my therapist and I discovered was, you know, when I was like, you know, elementary school, and I was like, you know, I was facing some issues at school that were kind of traumatic for me. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary, just like, oh,
Well, it's traumatic just being a kid,
I'm not
right?
doing well on these multiplication tables, and it was traumatic for me.
Surely, it counts.
But part of that therapy was to be like, okay, like you were saying, if you could, you know, sort of go back into that mindset, you'll be that 7-8-year-old Jordan. What does he need to hear from you?
Yeah.
And that was like one of the first things was, you're loved, you're safe,
Wow.
it's going to be okay.
Sure.
Even it wasn't like any kind of commentary on my parents, because I definitely was loved, but
Yeah.
I was in this uncertain, like, new situation
Absolutely, sure.
of being in school.
Well, there's
and-
pressure, right? You
Yeah.
know? Absolutely.
So yeah, that definitely resonates with me.
Yeah, I knew I was loved, but like I said, my dad was pretty rough. So, and then, you know, for whatever reason, just kind of going through that whole life thing, and then getting
Right.
into that whole life thing, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks. But I love it as well. Yeah, and then getting to be like 18, it was just kind of like, what is going on? And just so like overwhelmed, stressed out.
Yeah.
And, you know, my relationship with my dad definitely got more and more strained, you know, as the years went on. And I think probably to that point, you know, even though I knew, like, my mom was very supportive and really good about stuff. And, you know, she tried to kind of explain, like, my dad, which, again, maybe didn't help that much. You know, she's like, no, he's all stressed out and his work or whatever. Instead of going, that was out of line, you know.
Yeah.
You know, don't take that to heart, you know.
Right.
I'm still going to say marry this guy, but I
Right.
get that was probably
You needed
upsetting.
more validation of your
Yeah.
feelings and perspective.
Rather than, okay, now I feel like shit because this person just went off on me for no reason.
Yeah.
And now I have to feel bad for him
Right.
because he had a bad childhood himself. So I don't get to grieve, you know, I just have to go, oh, I feel really bad because what happened to me, but oh, poor guy, he feels terrible, you know? So it's
Yeah.
kind of a little messed up. But again, I forgot the question. What was the question again?
No, the questions are just like prompts.
Oh, okay, good. Because
So
like,
this is not like, you didn't answer the question.
what is number 2? You did not answer.
Um,
Okay, cool.
sit at this
Yeah, let's sit
table
here.
for a little bit.
That'd be lovely. Let's do that. Our bathroom had a mirror above the sink and then a mirror on the back of the door. So when you swung the door open, you would see, you know, like.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And when I was a little kid, I'd kind of go da 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 da. So we could see kind of like a can, or more like Rockettes, right? And I was always like doing that. And I just thought, that's really cool, you know. But then, you know, as it's imperfect, right? And so as you would look, you could kind of see, you know, the 1,000 Eileen Rockettes going this way, but
Yeah.
it starts to curve.
Yeah.
And I remember going, yeah, it kind of curves, and I couldn't see there. But then it all of a sudden hit me that like, whoa, like curves, and I can't see it. But it goes on forever, right? Because I could do the,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, like, I got it. Like, if this is reflecting that, and that's reflecting this, and that's reflecting this, that it was infinite, right?
Yeah.
And I remember just kind of going like, what? Like, I remember really just like being my little floored, you know?
Yeah.
And really, my knees like buckled because I was just so, I don't know if it's overwhelmed, but just the truth
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
Just like buckle my knees, man. And
Was it like in an exciting way or more of a? what does
just
that feel like?
I would say awe.
Just
you
awe,
know,
yeah.
just awe. Everything, you know, was like
Yeah.
amazing, beautiful, and awe. Like an acid trip, but I was really little. But yeah, just like whoa, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I do remember kind of like backing out of the bathroom, and then I went to talk to my mom, and I was like, dude, I just had the most wild thing. And I told her, like, you know, it goes on for like ever. And I think she kind of was like excited for me, right?
Yeah, nice.
You know, that I had that and I got it, you know. I mean, that's a pretty big thing to wrap your head around for anybody, much less like a little kid. And that I was kind of excited about it, but sort of horrified, but in a good way, you know. And she was like, yeah, you know, like, you got it. And she said, let me show you something. And I was like, okay. And so she tore a strip of paper and, you know, like that, and then twisted it and then held it and then taped it together and showed it to me. And she said, yeah, do you see how that was, you know, this one strip, it has two sides, you know. And then she twisted it and showed it to me. She said, yeah, like, let your finger go along this. And I was like, and then it came out on the other side. And I was like, whoa. Like, and at first I was thinking for a minute, I was like, wait a minute, she's telling me some kind of, it was a magic trick, you know how like when you do like this with your thumb, you know, like, it's just your thumb, it's not real. But you know, you're a kid and you can, when you get a little older, you figure out the thumb thing. You're like, it's bent, you know, it's not your thumb coming off. But you know, this clearly was not a trick. I mean, I could see it happening. Yeah. And it, you know, definitely was echoing the whole infinite Rockette thing. Yeah. And I was just like, what? You know, like, whoa. You know, I can remember being like, and then she explained because it's a Mobius strip, and she, you know, told me all about it. Like, you know,
that's so cool.
It was really cool, you know, and I really felt like that was a moment. Like my mom and I really, we got each other. Yeah. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, maybe that's why she let me watch The Prisoner, you know, because she was like, she's already there with this existential infinity thing. You know, it's like, go ahead, you know. But yeah. So it was a meaningful thing. Again, I forgot the question.
Yeah. No, that's. I gotta find a better place for your microphone.
I don't know. I'll try not to wiggle around this one. I can drink a bow. I'll just try not to wiggle around too much. How's that?
We'll try it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're getting the kinks out.
That's right.
All right. Yeah, so that was the kid stuff. Yeah, so that was actually, you know, a mixed childhood. I mean, like I said, my mom was amazing. Like, and she was a great mom for me because I can't really see other moms even really half of them understand what the heck I was talking about. Really, you know what I mean? I don't think they really, some of them wouldn't have gotten the whole infinity thing just in a concept, right? Much less that I was floored by it, and that's pretty cool, really, because like you should be. I mean, no matter your age, that should just rock your world, you know? So that was kind of neat that she let me kind of have big adult stuff. Yeah. And
that's part of the one of the great aspects of being a kid is you're just like in permanent learning mode, and so you have some of those really like cool, mind expanding experiences.
Yeah.
It's great when that actually gets to happen and you kind of get excited about it. And that,
and then someone feeds that.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, and I think that's probably when I got really liking math a whole lot and those kind of concepts and science and stuff in general. It probably set it on fire because when I would be in school, that was the kind of stuff I gravitated towards, you know. But I mean, like that whole like, oh, kind of feeling. I guess in college. Yeah. Taking different classes and like that. I took philosophy, and one of the philosophers, like Nietzsche, and I really liked that. And then one of the books that Fake Zarathustra. Did you ever read that one?
No.
It's a short novel-esque kind of thing that Nietzsche wrote, and there's a character Zarathustra, and I don't need to go into the whole detail of it, but basically this character has a lesson to share, and that's also part of Nietzsche's philosophy description of the eternal recurrence of the same, and his shtick, whatever, because he was kind of like, God is dead, right? And so the idea is like, if there's no God, then what do you do? Like what is the point here? And that your job is to become a creator before you create. That Uberman, the Ubermensch, So this eternal recurrence of the same is really to bring home the point that this is it, like right now. And that's hard to really get, because our minds have a hard time grasping that. Like even like we're here in this moment, like we could hold space, right? Yeah. And that is profound. More so because it's being recorded, I think, which is maybe why you're doing these things. But with the Nietzsche's eternal recurrence of the same, I won't be able to quote it exactly, but the gist is, he says to this person, like, imagine that there's a spider that comes down and whispers in your ear that everything you experience now, this moment, those leaves, the wind, and my voice will come back to you again and again and again, forever, eternally. How would you feel? And, he says, would you, be elated with joy, or would it crush you, with despair to know, like, this is it. Not only is this it forever, repeatedly, like you will have the same life over and over and over and over again. How does that make you feel? And I remember, like, reading that going, dude, like that would suck, because my life kind of sucked then.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck, over and over again, this shit, man, don't want that.
Yeah.
Really don't want that. But I think it did sort of affect me in that same way, and I take it to heart because time is very precious, and to really get the weight of what that really means, because if you do have one life, okay, fine, it's still just the one, limited time, but to really bring the point home, add that infinite thing really goes, dude, that's a lot. So during that time period, which was, kind of has some darkness there, kind of tell you a little bit about it, I was like, I need to get myself together. Like, I don't want to live like this. I don't want to wake up hungover and sick and sad and depressed and being with these icky people forever, So it kind of woke me up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that wasn't, when I first hear that of like repeating it over and over again, that seems like a lot of pressure. Like,
Well, it's
something that was helpful in your,
I don't know
at
if
that
it's
time.
pressure. It's an interesting point, right? I mean, for me, I didn't really think of it as pressure, but more like an awakening, like an awareness.
Okay.
And it rang true to me, like inescapable truth. And once you know it, like you can't unknow it, like you can't unring that bell. And, I have kind of my sense of higher power, but I don't ascribe to a particular dogmatic religion, and I don't necessarily go, we die, we're going to go to heaven, I'm going to sit on a cloud and get a harp instead. What do you call that? Reincarnation seems kind of appealing, maybe. But I just don't know. I mean, I don't know if the universe would have done that. I don't, the math, right? Like, why would that be it? Because no matter, you keep on, playing it out, it's still got to end. Or not, and if it doesn't, it kind of has to be infinite, and if it's going to be infinite, it's going to be going around like that Mobius strip. That's what I think. So anyway, so not more like just an awareness of a profound state, and that all you can do once you know that is to treat every moment with that same preciousness, respect.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't just something, I'll do this in a few minutes. I'll do that next year. I'll do this when I retire, because this right now is going to happen forever. And at this moment, am I doing my forever thing? With the understanding that life is connected, so you can't constantly go, I'm going to do my forever thing and just like sit on this couch, right? Because it feels so nice and soft. Because, the forever will kind of continue, and you'll be like, wow, I wish I hadn't sat on the couch that whole time, because now I'm broke. And I have to, go clean toilets for a living.
It's interesting. There's a number of schools of thought that kind of converge on this idea of, be in the moment and focus on right now. Yeah. Which I think is really, I think a lot of schools of thought converge on that because it's really important and it is helpful.
Yeah, and there has to be some truth in that, because, as you say, religions and or non-religions, philosophies of the Nietzsche flavor, they get there, right? Like, it's pretty much a thing. Like, we're humans, and we're different than animals. Like, dogs don't know they're going to die. Dogs don't know could be over soon. They're just like, yay this, yay that, and it's beautiful. That's great, but they don't have the blessing/curse of being a human, where you know that there's a future and that there was a past, and that what you are now is informed by that. Kind of freaky thing when you think about it. Like, it's kind of awful in a way. I mean, it's a gift, but at the same time, that's a lot. I think that's why I didn't have kids. I think so, you know, because well, partly because it just, you know, there's a lot of reasons, but as a young kid, girl, I never played with dolls. Like my girlfriends would be like, "Hey, that doll," and I was like, "That's dumb. I don't want to do that." You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just like, give me a race car or something, you know. And just thought it was just like, why would I want to do that? You know, it didn't seem like a fun play. I mean, I like Fisher Price toys, you know, and I like going down slides and, you know, maybe creating little plays, but like taking care of a baby was like, no thanks. And anyway, as I got older, I still was like, oh, poof, no, you know, I didn't have any real thoughts along those lines. And then as I got, you know, older, just the sense of responsibility that would actually mean, you know, like that's your responsibility, that little life, you brought it here, you know. And I think also because my dad, you know, it made me feel kind of like it sucked. And I kept thinking, I don't want to feel that way to some thing, like you thing are making my life suck. Not that I would. I probably would have been a decent mom. And I doubt I would have done that kind of thing to my own kid. But there's a risk. And then it's also kind of that Nietzsche thing is that, you know, become a creator before you create. Like really know who you are and what you want and all that entails before you go out and create another one of these humans sort of thing. And Nietzsche's got his own problems, right? Because, I mean, he was kind of a crabby dude and didn't get many dates, so he might have had that kind of attitude because he was like, no one's going to marry you and you're going to have any kids anyway because you're a drag. But I read a lot of his life because he had that one, Lou Salome, who was like a philosophy lady of great renown and like one of the first like psychiatrist types back in the day. And he fell in love with her, but she was like, yeah, whatever. So, which is, you know, see a lot of philosophers are like that. Have you noticed that? A lot of the male philosophers that become famous and the existential ones is because they never had like a partner that they were with, you know, they were bummed out.
Yeah.
You know, because they didn't really connect with society. Anyway, back to the whole why am I not having kids thing. So, yeah, I didn't really want to do that. It just didn't seem appealing to me. And then I think I really had a sense of like, that it was kind of a, I know it sounds bad, you know, because you got a bunch of kids, so I don't mean to bum me out here. But it's such a huge responsibility and kind of a, kind of an abomination to have to be a human, you know, to be this creature that is unlike the other creatures in this world that, you know, God or whatever created, and to know, you know, I mean, it's beautiful too. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love life and it's a blessing, and it has to be this way. I mean, it has to be this way for it to have meaning. I mean, it has to be like you go, oh my God, like, what does it mean? We're going to die and what's out there? I mean, like, that's super cool. I mean, I would be bored as a dog, frankly. So it's cool if I have to be alive that I'm incarnated as a human. But just the idea of bringing that another one just here, I mean, I would just freak out, you know, because I just think it would be too much. I mean, I think it's a lot to be a human. So I don't know, making a bunch of them seems like a not a good plan for me anyway. But you go
sense.
be you.
Everybody's got to make their own decision and have their own rationale.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, it's interesting too because I have to say, so with this caveat, is that when my sister had her second baby, I don't know, it may be a chemical thing too, because I was in my early 30s then, and I had been married. I got married to this guy, and he was older than me, and he'd had a vasectomy. And so when we first, you know, fell in love, and I was like, oh, and, you know, got to those kind of discussions, he said, oh, well, you know, you don't have to worry about that. I had a vasectomy. And I do kind of remember my heart sinking, like, oh, shoot, like, that's off the table. So it's kind of maybe I rewrite history a bit because we were married through the window of time when I could have gotten pregnant and had a baby. Okay. But when my sister had her second kid, I remember being like kind of jonesing for a baby. I was like, oh, that is kind of cool. Maybe I would like to do that. Yeah. So, anyway.
Just a quick technical topic. I think that I'm worried that the sound's going to pick up the...
Oh, me thumping around so much? Oh, I'll try and be more
I don't want to like
that.
make you like nervous,
I can do it.
But okay.
I can do this. Yeah, good point. Oh, I didn't think about that. Well, this is part of your learning thing too.
Yes, exactly.
Wonder what other ways you could do it so that doesn't happen in the future. I guess maybe have a cloth. You could bring a cloth with you so that any table that you had a boom to it, maybe.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, all right.
Another question for you. What of the kind of tough experiences as a child, which of them do you think, and some of this you've already sort of touched on a little bit, but which of them do you think affected your life later on that you eventually had to kind of work to resolve?
Oh, let me think here. See how gently I did that? Let's see. Well, it does seem kind of, now that I think about it, if I'm going to put a thread, there kind of did seem to be like an early awareness of bigger stuff going on, like beyond my awareness, and then maybe an early sense of being concerned about things that were outside of my bubble, right? When you get older, they'll say, what's in your sphere of influence? Like you've done all your thing. And so I think I didn't have good boundaries that way. And so those early experiences, when I mentioned before, of like having a panic attack, walking around my own backyard, because I think I was thinking at the time, what if this isn't always here? What if we move and I don't know my way around, or if I wasn't, just anxiety, general anxiety kind of thing, beyond my control.
Yeah.
That, and then, these other things that I mentioned before, trying to control my environment, my feelings, my emotions, my physical space, to understand beyond just the here and the now. What do you call it? Future tripping kind of thing. So all of that sort of embedded in me as a kid. I think it just took a long time, years of therapy, to recognize, like, okay, that's you. That's just how you are. And there's good things about that, because that has inspired you to do what one might consider big things, courageous things. People will say things like, oh, you did an Ironman, that's so badass, or whatever. And, oh, you did a startup. And, there's other stuff. I don't want to be like listing all my great stuff. But when asked if I'm putting together a resume, that's your job to go, oh, look how awesome I am. But that being said, the kind of things that ostensibly would be considered by many people to be like, wow, that's great, you must be courageous, or you must do these things. That I know who I am, and I know how I am, and I'm wired pretty tight. I have anxiety just built in. And in therapy, some of the things that I learned is that rather than try and minimize, or even like parents do for you, like, oh, it's okay, talk you out of it, is to match the emotion. So if you're saying like, oh, I'm really scared about this, and someone's saying, well, instead of saying scared, or I'm excited, because they resonate at the same level. Instead of saying calm down, don't be scared, because it's too contrasty. Like your brain's like, yeah, right, this is here, and you're telling me to be here, and this is just cognitive dissonance I can't do. But if you say, well, I'm really anxious, but I'm excited, so that kind of thing. So use my nature, which is somewhat fearful by design, to work in my favor.
Okay.
So I have, as you know, like I've left jobs that I was, probably pretty good at, and I'm good, I got here, and get out of my comfort zone. And then I actually, when I look at my life, I kind of have a pattern of, I have this job, I'm kind of like, I reached to get this job. Like maybe, I was at the upper bound of like, I don't quite know that programming language yet, but I have this job and I have to do that.
Yeah.
Or I haven't quite gotten that skill, or I haven't quite managed these people, but I'm getting it. I'm pushing to get that next rung. And then get there, and then kind of get okay with it. And then as soon as I'm okay with it, I'm like, gotta go, So when people say about living outside of your comfort zone, like, I don't know what it's like to not. I've been outside my comfort zone my whole life. And the reason is the same, is that it's not that I'm actually courageous, is that I'm scared not to. Like, do I want to keep doing this forever? Do I want to be in this job forever? What will I regret not trying something new if I don't? So I was more afraid of what I would feel like in the future if I didn't do something now. So it's really the fear of not doing it, not the courage to do.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So it's, again, and like, I think that's something I sort of learned to harness, which is like, look, this is how your nature is, and make that work for you. Because instead of trying to say, let me try and not be me, this is not gonna work,
So it's more of you don't want to find yourself in the future be like, why did you stay in that so long?
Yeah, why did you keep doing that? You knew you weren't quite happy. You could have been better. You could have done more. You could have like followed your bliss, and you didn't. And this can sound, I don't need to keep making excuses to you. Like, I don't want you to judge me. You might think this is weird, Jordan.
No,
I know you won't judge
we're
me.
different people. So.
And you wouldn't anyway. You're just not that way. You're a sweet guy. So the triathlon thing, right? So I use it. I've always been kind of physically fit and doing that kind of stuff. I was competitive in high school and sports. And when I came here, I knew that I needed to kind of like get something going on to stay fit. So I hired a trainer, and he was a really, really amazing trainer. And so he was pretty intense, and I'm pretty fit. And so he was just one of those trainers that push you as far as you're willing to go. And I'm very trainable. And having been an athlete and coachable, like you keep saying jump, and I'm like, how high? You know, I would just keep on going. And so I just kind of would. And trainers like me because a lot of their clients just don't. And they're complaining. And it kind of sucks to be a trainer and be like, dragging someone up a hill, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when, at least my experience has been that when I have trainers, they're like, you know, I got a live one here, you know. So it was just like, trained me really, really hard. And, yeah, at the time I was doing some bodybuilding stuff. And he was like, hey, you know, bodybuilding's really not that great for you, actually. You know, like your muscles aren't supple. And anyway, he kind of said, you know, I think you should do this Ironman. I think you should do an Ironman. And I actually didn't know what that was. And I was like, okay, because I didn't want him to not like me. You know, I didn't want him to think I wasn't cool. And so I was like, yeah, okay. And so he kind of just explained what it was. And I had ridden a bike, like, since I was, like, in high school, a kid. And I was never, like, a cyclist. You know, I rode a bike to get places. And I swam, but I wasn't, like, a swimmer. You know, I could run. I was always a good runner. But I hadn't run. I was a sprinter. You know, I did 400 meters and stuff like that. And he had me run about steer. So I was fit, but I didn't do... I wasn't a triathlete. I hadn't run a marathon. And he was like, do this Ironman thing. I was like, okay. And he said, there's one next year. So, you know, it's Canadian Ironman. You know, my girlfriend's doing it. Want to come up with us and, you know, check it out, see what you want to, you know, do. Like, we got to go there to support her, whatever. And I was like, okay, because it was going to be a weekend, you know. So I went, and it did look pretty cool. But I was like, there's no way I could do it, you know. But it looked really cool, and she had done it, and it was really amazing. I mean, it was one of those things where it's just going to be chills to watch people crossing the finish line, you know. Because you'd see, you know, like the effort, the endurance, the strength, the pain, the joy of seeing these people, like one after the other, crossing that finish line of all types, you know. I mean, like you'd see, you know, young, fit Navy SEAL type people doing it, little old ladies trucking right along, you know, people without limbs, you know. I mean, just like, you want to cry. It's like so inspiring, and just the joy on their face. And I was like, yeah, it looks really cool. And again, I didn't want him to think I was a kind of a weenie or just like me, or that he was putting this effort for no reason. So I was like, yeah. So I signed up, and so I trained. Like, I just did everything he said. You know, like he said, okay, you get this bike, and we do this and that. I'm gonna go with you. And so he just kept training me to do stuff. And a lot of it was somewhat sports specific, like the swim, bike, run, you know. I got a wetsuit, got the tri bike, you know. I kind of built up through those things, but really the whole time I was just kicking the can down the road because I was like, well, maybe he'll move, you know. Maybe they'll cancel this race, you know. But I was like, yeah, you know. So I just did what he said, thinking this is not going to happen, or I'll figure it out later, you know. So I kept doing it, and you know, he had me doing like these seal rolls. I'd roll and do a pike roll, like over and over again. So, and after a while, I was like, shouldn't I be like swimming and riding a bike or something? And he's like, really, no. Like, you know, like you've got the techniques, you got the skill. And he said, really, it's the strength that you need. And I still hadn't run more than 10 miles, you know, pacing myself. And he's like, you're good. You know, your heart rate's fine. You know, we do this. Sometimes we do 2-hour high impact stuff. You're going to be fine. He said, you know, by the end, you know, you can walk. You know, if you get to a certain time, you can walk the run if it gets that bad, but you won't. You'll be fine. And at one point, I'd run like 13 miles. You know, but that's all I'd ever run. I'd never run a marathon. Anyway, I just did what he said, doing it. But really, the whole time, I wasn't like, yeah, you know, want to do an Ironman. But I was like, oh, he'll think I'm you know, he put in all this time for me. So I just didn't want to not do it.
Interesting.
I was afraid not to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did it, and then I loved it. And I was like, okay, I really want to do more of these. So, yeah.
And how long ago was your first Ironman?
That was 2007? 2008, something like that.
A few years.
Yeah.
Then.
So did the full Ironman. Also, I did he had me do a half Ironman, just kind of like practice sort of thing, you know, but just to make sure that it psychologically could be like, I could do this. I could do twice as much as this. And I did. I was like, okay, I think I could do it. Then I was getting excited about it. So I did that, and then I did a couple of half Ironman, another full Ironman. And I just loved them. It was so fun. And plus it gave me a reason. I gotta have a reason, you know. Like, it's hard to train every day. If you're like, I'm just gonna get up out of bed and move around, you know, I don't want to, you know. So it's kind of that thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, what is my reason for doing this, you know? And that whole existential life thing, like, what is the point? And the point is, it doesn't matter. You know, it's like this moment, like, what needs to be done right now? That's kind of Zen too, like, you know, chop wood, carry water, you know, like this moment, like, what do I need to do? And then also to parlay on that, like the fear-based personality type that I am, after we'd done the swim and I really liked it, I was really good at it. One of my friends was like, "Oh, that's really good. You know, like that you could swim, and you know that you can be in open water and you can swim. Like so, if it was like a boat, you know, you're in a wreck, like you'd be fine, you know." And I thought, like, what if I wasn't a boat? Like, would I be fine? I don't know, you know. Like that was really calm water. And I couldn't get the thought out of my head. I was obsessed because I've actually kind of had a fear of drowning like my whole life. Actually, I don't know why. I think I heard that was like one of the worst ways to die. I hear it's really painful. So I was like, fuck, you know, that would really suck. Like, I don't know if I really would be okay. And I couldn't get the thought out of my head. And then this escape from Alcatraz is a triathlon. And you jump off a ferry and you swim, well, obviously, Alcatraz. You swim where, you're not on the island of Alcatraz and jump off, but there's a ferry, jump off by there and you swim to the shore. And, you know, it's waves, right? And so I signed up for that because I was like, I better know how to do this. If I actually need to do this.
Yeah.
So I didn't really want to do it at all.
Tackle your fear.
But I figured, you know, it's pretty constrained, right? There's kayaks there and, you know, that kind of thing. And so Eric and I signed up for it. But we also, because as a team, like people were like, yeah, let's all sign up, you know? So we signed up. It's a lottery. And I was signing up partly because I was like, well, I might not make it, which is good, because I don't want to actually do it. Anyway, nobody got in but me. Anyway, Eric ended up being able to do it. So we did the thing, got there. And you're on the ferry, and I'd practiced, and we had been swimming in the colder water, so I knew that it would be okay. But they had changed the date. Like the date was, when was it? They'd moved it up because the America's Cup was there, so the water was actually made colder than it ever had been. But we'd been swimming in Puget Sound, so it was okay, you know. But really, it's like you're jumping off into 56-degree water, you know, off of a ferry, you know, into the waves, and you know the San Francisco Bay is not calm. It's not, you know, at all. And so I kind of knew it was going to be wavy, but I really didn't know exactly what to expect. And, you know, but once you're on the boat, that's another, I like that kind of, I like to have no choice.